Welcome to this ICF Slalom podcast episode, part of the series running until the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games. We bring you the inside stories from around the globe from the people who make canoe slalom so special. Here's your host, John Gregory.
A warm welcome to the latest ICF Slalom podcast episode. Thanks for joining me. I recently read Balancing Act, Mastering Work, Wealth and Wellbeing by Sarah Brennand, and featuring insights from Olympic silver medalist Adam Burgess. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to learn more and share with you all. Today I'm joined by British executive coach, athlete and author Sarah Brennand and Olympic silver medalist Adam Burgess. This is now Adam's 16th season on the GB senior team, initially in C2 and then C1. I appreciate Adam is only one of the experts sharing their insights in Sarah's book. You will hear how Sarah and Adam have learned from each other, concepts from the book, and more about Adam's breathwork. Here is my conversation with Sarah and Adam. I started by asking Sarah about her experience of canoe kayaking.
My experience of canoeing goes back to when I was young, actually. Nothing at all on the level of both of you and certainly of Adam, but I do remember canoeing with my parents on the local canal here and on the River Trent. But it was very much a social hobby on a weekend and nothing at any speed or any kind of challenging water. So I have done it, and I've had the privilege as well, actually, of watching Adam more recently with my youngest son Brody competing on the water here. Little, I would say, experience myself. Very much enjoy watching it, and in terms of water, I've got I've done a lot of rowing in my time. I'm triathlon training at the moment, so I'm in the water and the lake several times a week, and I'm definitely questioning whether I should be getting in a boat rather than in the lake at the moment because it's incredibly cold. So, it's something that I enjoy watching. That I'll say I've brought Brody down to watch as well, and he's 9, so he's keen to get in the boat and give it a go. And actually, the Stafford Stone Canoe Club was so inclusive. It's so nice to have it on the doorstep, and also to see people of different ages getting in the boats and giving it a go. So I would be very happy to get in and give it a go, but not any kind of competitive race. Just to have a fun one weekend will be brilliant.
Okay, well, Adam, of course, you can speak to how good Stafford and Stone is as a club and as a place to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got so much to thank Stafford and Stone Canoe Club for, but it really is just a great place. And one thing that always strikes me when I go back now is the big groups of kids that come through the club. Yeah, like exactly how Sarah said, just how inclusive it is. I think our sport, I think it's quite unique, and I think it probably attracts a certain type of person. I think with that, what I see is people finding a sense of belonging at that club, which whether people continue the sport into elite level or they're just doing it for fun, that's such a great thing about it, I think.
Sarah, we might be able to lure you to a World Cup race at Lee Valley. It was August 2027. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, August, isn't it? Yeah, that's the next big one we have over here.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, that's in the diary already.
Okay, well, that would be very cool. We bring family. Sarah, what made Adam a good choice as one of the experts for your book?
I think Adam was a very obvious choice, and I'm really pleased that, when I reached out, Adam, you were so accommodating. The book, Balancing Act, Mastering Work, Wealth and Wellbeing, really started as a high performance and sustainable success, very much in the business space. My background is high performance, but generally within the corporate space, although I have the sporting background as well. But I always believe there is so much transferability from sport into business. A lot of the concepts, the resilience, the mindset, I think there is so much to that business people and general population can learn. But I also felt when I was writing the book that it needed to have not just theory and not just things that I talk about that I've done or I've experienced over the years and things about how we can build a high-performing life in the broadest sense, not just our careers, but actually across our money and our purpose and our mental and physical health. and having that work life, not necessarily that boundary balance, but that integration, which is becoming much more popular. The things that helps readers associate and resonate with topics like that is when you have live case studies and when you have stories from people who are doing it at the moment, and how you can learn how they do it and maybe some of the things that they wish they'd done slightly differently as well. And so the book includes, Adam as a Olympian, along with who are succeeding in fintech, in the charity sector, in wealth and investment, and it gives the readers a really nice breadth of actually here's some people who are really high performing, and this is how they are balancing that performance element in that one area, sport or business, with building a more holistic, successful life as well. And I think I mentioned it in the book. I met Adam in his study days doing sports science and management at Nottingham Trent University, and pre being an Olympian, but the mindset and the commitment to do well was always there. I think I understood it more, Adam, from your academic approach, because you were very committed to doing very well at university and managing the balance of that alongside the high and committed training schedule that he had. And obviously seeing how Adam's progressed since, but also alongside sport, how you've had to manage sponsorship and manage the commercial side of sport, but also have that separate channel where you've built out the Breathwork Academy. And I think that's a very entrepreneurial approach to the world of sport. And I think it's one that a lot of people, hopefully, from reading it or listening to podcasts and finding out more about what Adam's done, I think that's something that people can really learn from this, rather than a single identity, understanding that there's a lot more that we can do. And actually that's really helpful because it gives us a greater and a broader purpose, but also it helps later down the line with transition. So, I know that there's a lot of athletes, but also military, it's common as well, and in business where people struggle with that transition element of what next, and how do they, rather than doing something brilliantly, stop and then go, how who am I now? What do I do next? Actually starting to build that next stage concurrently, as Adam has done and is continuing to do so well.
What had you learned from collaborating with Sarah on this Balancing Act book project?
I think what I was thinking about then when Sarah was speaking was, for a long time, I've had this belief that real success is this holistic success, rather than just in one domain. I think I ask the question sometimes, at what cost? If we're seeing, there's a champion in something, but, then the career ends and they crash and burn, what next? And I sort of wonder where it came from, for me, to be honest. I think for sure, the experience at Nottingham Trent, the degree that I chose, literally sports science and management, really got to see exactly what Sarah's talking about, the crossover between sport and business, and where traits or behaviors, things that we do in sport, just how that transfers perfectly into the business world as well. But even previous to that, I think I was aware early on the dangers of resting too much of our identity just in the sport. I think I was quite young, even pre-university, realizing, I don't want to just be a canoe slalom athlete. That feels risky. This can't be forever. I might not make it, all of these things. And I think that's probably the influence of my parents, probably the canoe club as well. I think Ian Raspin as well, you'll know Rasbo. He's an early influence on me from a sport psych perspective, and really tried to instill, I guess, a sense of perspective and understanding that what we were doing, it's a little strange. We're in our bubble and there's this whole world out there. So I think, for the longest time, I've tried to, keep feet in the real world as well as our amazing canoe slalom bubble.
I think that is very, very smart. It's always fascinated me how our roles in life can evolve or change or switch around. So I think, yeah, reading the book and watching the interview, it appears that your roles very much have reversed. Sarah, you were at one stage with a sports science teacher, and now, by the sounds of it from the book, yeah, you're now the student learning about inspired breathing from Adam.
And I think, one of the key things I absolutely believe is that, to be good at what you do, whether that's in sport or business or as a practitioner, like you should always remain a student. I actually, I think there hopefully will never become a time where I'm complacent enough to think that I know everything, because the world moves and we need to move with it. And I think we can hone our skills in particular areas by doing so. We can never be the expert at everything. And so it's important to learn from those who know more. And just as the many students that I've taught back in the day, and we're going back, I hope all of them now will be far above where I am in the areas that they've chosen to specialise in. So, but I think the coming onto the breathing, I think it's a really crucial area actually, because I can think of many times across my life. And from a business perspective, I take presentation skills. We talk about how we can use breathing to calm nerves and to calm anxiety or to fuel adrenaline. That wasn't something that I learned at school, though. That's something that's kind of come, later on. There's things where, after the birth of my children, I suffered with a lot of backache, and I had to focus on posture and Pilates, and then learn how to breathe in Pilates. And there's all these different areas where you think, oh, it comes back to the breath. And even now, transitioning from pool swimming to lake swimming has been horrendous because it's absolutely freezing. And it turns out that, for a good month of my training in the last 3 months, a lot of it has just been learning how to breathe in the water properly, doing front crawl in cold water. And, when I started that triathlon journey, I never expected such a lot of my training to just stop from the high intensity and go, right, let's strip it back to technique, to mobilization, into breathing. And I think it's brilliant what Adam's done. I'm not at all surprised that when he had an injury and people couldn't help him, I think, we spoke in our interview, didn't we, Adam, about you had many people try and help you, and actually you couldn't get the answers. So rather than going, okay, that's it, obviously the mindset is, oh, well, I'll go and find out myself because there must be something I can do. And that led him, that's the entrepreneurial mindset that leads you to something, to find answers, and then to essentially, turn it into a business. And I think it's a really key area. I think so many people can and should be speaking to people like Adam to learn actually how to breathe properly, how to use it for the very basics of posture, for things like how to perform well. I mean, even, we talked about when we spoke about the nasal breathing, and then when I've been running on a treadmill or running outside going, oh goodness, I'm not doing it again. And I literally have Adam's voices in my head going, breathe through your nose, it's really hard to begin with, but it'll be worth it in the long run. And, coming back to being a student, actually, I think all those things where you can learn something from somebody, you carry it with you, don't you? And they become the voices in your head and the people that you listen to and can learn from. So, very much, very happy to continue to be a student and to learn from those who give their time to focus and to really go a lot deeper into a particular area. And something like breathing, I think, it can sound like such a simple thing. We're all born doing it, and yet actually it can be quite complex. But the benefits of knowing how to do it right and to do it differently in different circumstances, I think, can have so far-reaching positive influence on the physical health as well as the mental health as well.
Sarah, I want to give you some opportunity to explain some of the fundamental concepts from the book. But Adam, I mean, yeah, we're starting to talk about breathing. Yeah, tell us more about Inspired Breath Academy now.
I do some work on the side to support my canoe slalom career as a breathing coach. Also, the idea is, building something for the future, for afterwards when I finish, whether it'll be, just breathing or something more holistic, wellnessy. Like generally, I'm not sure yet, but I've got time. I've got a bit of, it's like we're in quite a unique position as athletes to start something like this. Like, I'm funded from UK Sport. I'm sponsored by JCB. Like, I know that I can continue to do the sport as is. and there's kind of opportunity and threat with this, right? So it's great because I can play really and decide how I want to do this work, how much I want to do, what style of work I want to do. There's not like a huge incentive to go out and do it because it's not my livelihood yet. There's a double-edged sword to most things, and that's what it is for me with this particular situation. I guess on that and on the idea of kind of playing, I've recently decided to kind of move away actually from that Inspired Breath Academy like branding and to try and just kind of bring everything together all in one. It's funny, I was thinking about this again when we agreed to do the podcast. One of my exams at uni, actually, for we did an entrepreneurship module. I remember Sarah was trying to help me at the end with like the way she was prompting the questions, and I didn't get it. And then after when she fed back, she said, "I was trying to help you here as well, but you didn't quite get it. Like you should have used." I think it was some kind of like sports nutrition company I was pitching. I think because because it was this like fake scenario, I didn't feel I didn't have the confidence, I think, just to use my own personal brand. Well, I am an athlete, so that's why I know about some of this stuff. So I kept that back. Yeah, kind of on those lines in the real world now, it's like, well, why aren't I using that more? Why have I created this separate thing when just Adam Burgess, Olympic silver medalist, like that's so much of a better brand that's already established, right? I don't need to create something else that has authority. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm playing it at the moment. And I guess from that perspective, I guess I don't need to rely so much on, picking up like one-to-one coaching gigs or corporate gigs. If I'm combining the whole thing, I guess it opens up other opportunities like commercial sponsorship opportunities and appearances because it's like, oh, we can get this athlete in who's also a breathing coach rather than I'm trying to, do two separate things. I'm trying to bring it together, if that makes sense.
The breathing academy and the breathing work was very much a personal journey in some respects, but how have you seen it resonating with other paddlers and maybe other athletes outside of canoeing?
Yeah, certainly outside of canoeing is where I've done most of my work. I don't want to. I mean, I was really reluctant to start teaching because it works, which I think is the biggest testimony there is. But I didn't want to talk about it. I don't want my competitors doing the same things as me if I think there's a performance advantage there. But I guess I got to the point where, the information's out there. There's other people out here talking about it now. I feel safe that, I can promote it. And, if people want to do their own research, then they can. Like, not necessarily I'm going to start working with, Nico and Ziga anytime soon. Help those boys out. But yeah, I do a bit in the sport, I think, with some younger athletes, certainly athletes that compete in different category to me as well. But yeah, what have I seen? I guess a real mixture. The main thing for me is that from what I've seen working one-to-one and in groups is that it works best when it's like the athletes kind of come with the idea that they want to do it. Groups is difficult. If I work with a sport and it's like one of the coaches or something has got me in, it's like it almost feels like homework, I guess, for the athletes. When I get someone where it's been their idea, it's like they're like a sponge and the results have been amazing. I don't think everyone needs it, I think. It's certainly not for everyone. I think the more I learn about it, it gets more and more difficult to talk about because the answer to everything is just like, it depends. And I can give you an example of that I've been thinking about this week actually is on I think a lot about like rib cage mobility and that ability to get a full breath in and the ability to expand the rib cage. And that's kind of been a bit of a principle for me for ages now that, this is something that's pretty much for everyone to work on this like spine mobility because it's literally the back of your rib cage. And then this week I thought, oh no, but it depends because you've got people who are already hypermobile and these people struggle to get the full breath in just for a completely different reason. It's not because they can't get the range, it's because they can't exhale fully enough. Yeah, I'm not really sure where I'm going with that. Just other than it's really interesting for me and I'm 100% like still a student of it as well. I almost enjoy the study of it more than teaching still, to be honest. I love a new challenge. I love working in a new sport. if someone comes to me with a problem, I guess the thing that I'm doing a bit different, I guess, to your average like breathwork coach that you might see online is that, I don't teach like a model. What I do through I work with my mentor, Martin McPhillamy, the School of Breath Science. With that, we lead with assessments first. So we assess first. We understand what the client needs, if they need some help, and then from that we kind of build a plan and we work together on it. Every case I've worked on has been so unique. We usually end up creating new exercises with the clients just to try and get something that's like specific to them.
I think it's fascinating. I mean, I'd be the first to say it's a completely new field area to me. I had really very little knowledge of it. And Sarah, hopefully you're the beneficiary of Adam's work and insights.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think we talked about it a bit, but even just those bits that I talked, again, it's kind of been that sponge to learning, isn't it? I think you don't know what you don't know. So the bits that I took from our conversation, Adam, of course, I'm putting them into practice. You are going so much deeper into your knowledge of it, but I think that gives you, as a coach or a teacher to somebody else. And I think this comes with anything, doesn't it? I think the best coaches or teachers are the ones that have that ability to have this massive toolbox of all these different things and to pull out the thing that their particular client needs, because individuals are individual, aren't they? And so the more you can bespoke or personalize that teaching element or the coaching element, that's got to be the best thing for the client. Yeah.
Let's talk about your book, Balancing Act. Yeah, what was the experience of publishing a book? I mean, how hard was it to try and take all the concepts and ideas in your head and put them onto paper?
Well, it was a journey for sure. The reason I decided to write the book at the time was because working with businesses, working with individuals from a executive coaching perspective or a training perspective, there was just not that one resource that I wanted to be able to give the client, when I'm working with them. So from an executive coaching perspective, it typically the conversation starts around work, it's the strategy, it's the business coaching. However, because of my breadth of coaching experience in emotional intelligence, neuro-linguistic programming, performance, it generally at some point will go off into the wider life of the client, the other things that are impacting work, the stresses or the pressures or the reasons why they're building a business because they want to achieve something. So of course in that conversation you need to understand what they want to achieve so you can understand motivation and timescales and everything else. And there just wasn't the book to go or the resource to go, just have a read of this or this will help, particularly those that didn't want or couldn't afford full coaching or the training because what we generally find is we go somewhere for leadership and we go somewhere else to understand how we manage our money and we go somewhere else for sports psychology and then we go, well, I don't really, we go into this vast, really broad area for kind of life. So it started off about going, actually, randomly, I decided to do it at the time when I was completely self-employed, really busy. And I thought, well, why not write a book at the same time? But it came from a place of value, wanting to create value for clients and create this book that gave people, readers, listeners, a tool to enable them to achieve high performance, but in a sustainable way. And therefore it needs to be a broader way than just one of those individual channels. And that's why the subtitle of it is this: Mastering Work, Wealth and Wellbeing, because those three are really interconnected. So how I did it took 6 months. It evolved as I went. I definitely got to month 3 and thought, I now have this model and I've now got to go back and write everything I've already written to make it, to embed it within the model. And then I got in my head how I was going to include and, interview and include people. And of course, that changed. I realized I needed to bring that much earlier and embed it in a very different way. I started off by chunking my time and then actually realized that it's quite hard actually to spend a week writing and to 3 weeks later come back and, spend just one of those days rereading everything you've written. And so it was a very interesting journey, but actually hugely enjoyable as well, because it forced me to to take all my knowledge and learning and the science and the theory and the application and the examples that I built over the last 20 years, but also integrate that with the people that I interviewed, Adam included, for the book, and make it as practical and as valuable as possible for the reader. So it was really, and it was really enjoyable. I still look back at it as something that was a really good experience. And even, some of the things I write in the book about how we all perform individually, just before we started the podcast, you were talking about early morning training sessions and things. That is not me, by the way. That I to write the book, it would be through the evening and into the early morning. And in fact, towards the end, I took a week where I went away. And that is what I did. I generally worked from about 11 in the morning right through till kind of 5-ish the following morning, sleep for a few hours, just because that's my natural body clock. And it was really nice to get away from the busyness of general life and children and commitments and actually go, if I want to work in the way that I like to do it, actually, that's exactly what it was. It was through the night and into the mornings. So it was actually really refreshing. And what I did come back from that week was thinking, if I just did one of these weeks every month, I could probably get 2 or 3 weeks worth of work actually done, when you don't have the other distractions. So it was insightful to just actually be able to reflect on my own work preferences too, and balance that. It's a bit of a play on the title, isn't it? But actually balance writing a book alongside work and clients and children and training myself and sports clubs and everything else. But hopefully the development of it is created a resource that's valuable, that helps people to understand how to integrate money and mission, how to create a career that has purpose, that means something to them, and then to financially scaffold it rather than doing these things in complete isolation. And then equally to remember the importance of mental and physical health on our ability to do those things. They're not this well-being add-on, that actually are how mentally strong we are, our mental wealth, and how physically capable we are. Those things enable our work or our sport performance. They don't sit separately, and they change. Those needs change over time and as we age as well. But they're also the traditional approach to work and life, and these really set boundaries, that's evolved as well, particularly since the pandemic and remote working and global time zones and things. Some people still like the boundaries, and that's explored in the book. Not everybody does, and that's creating quite a challenge actually in the workplace, because I think more people are pushing back and go, no, actually, I've proven that I can work from home or at a distance. So those things change as well. But again, like the commitment to creating a book that was of value, the communication side of the work I've done in the past, I know that not everyone wants to just read a book, hence why there's a website with resources and downloadables and exercises you can do and things that are just make that knowledge accessible, but also keep it live. So it's not, it's done and it's completed and that'll go out of date. It keeps it live and applied.
I think you did an amazing job. So hopefully the process hasn't frightened you off. It can take over your life. Adam, how did the finished book resonate with you? Maybe it's a bit of a guide for the future for you.
Yeah, no, I thought it was amazing. The two things I thought early on was how does Sarah fit all of this in her head? Because I guess that's often what we get with books, right? You've got kind of access to someone's thoughts and the way that they think. And, I was kind of blown away by that, all the models and frameworks and the exercises. Yeah, I thought it could have been like 3 or 4 books worth as well. There is so much in there, so much value. And that's, I've not even checked out the online platform yet. Like, there's even more on there. So, I'm looking forward to check that out. There's a few of the exercises I've got a list of ones that I want to go through myself, and some of it's quite similar to what we do in sport as well. The way we set goals and things like that. It's nice to see that crossover. One I was thinking about that's like super relevant in sport is that like money mission. It's not something people like to talk about too much, but it's tough. And there's a trade-off there at times. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I think I think a lot of it's a mindset. I think, I think I grew up in this sport thinking, oh, there's no money in this sport. And I was okay with that. I was like, that's like a sacrifice I'm happy to make. I get to do what I love every single day. But like, I'm not sure I'll be able to do it still at this age if like it would be irresponsible, I think, if I hadn't turned it into a proper career and, learned to navigate sponsorship agreements, commercial opportunities with brands, how to make money through social media. And I think the book could be a really useful resource, to help teach athletes how to do that as well as people in business. I mean, we've seen athletes resort to some less conventional methods of making money to survive in sport. And, if they had access to kind of a better resource, something like this, then maybe they wouldn't have had to resort to that. There's a way of doing things. And again, it's that like at what cost, right? One thing that changed with me was I guess seeing that there is opportunity to do it in sport. And I do get younger athletes, speaking to me now, asking about, how do I negotiate this social media deal? Like, what should I be charging for an Instagram post and things like that? It's stuff that we're not taught, right? And part of the problem is no one talks about it. It's not necessarily something to talk about like numbers in public, like in this sort of like setting, but like ask your teammates if like for some advice. I'm the oldest on the team now, so yeah, it makes sense that a few of the guys come to me, but people on other teams, other sports clubs, whatever it is, speak to people that are doing it already. Because yeah, I mean, like I'm hoping to do this sport for, at least 2 more Olympic cycles. That would be like 40 in Brisbane. So, by that point, if I was retiring, having only ever just done the sport, then I'm thinking two things, like one, what sort of situation would I be in financially? Probably not a good one. And two, like what are my potential career prospects after that? Also probably not good. Unless coaching, that's probably the only one I'd have. Yeah, I think with what I've done now, I feel like very comfortable. I never thought it would be possible for me to buy a house as a canoe slalom athlete. I've done that last year, and now, content that I can be successful in business during and after sport, or have career opportunities as well. I think because of the way that I guess I've learned to put myself out there and see those opportunities.
Congratulations. I've got questions for you both. Sarah, it would appear that, yeah, we've had, I've got a variety of books here, but it would appear that we've had a few people in the canoe slalom space who come to mind. Yeah, I mean, Claire Fox is a name from many years ago who then wrote a book, Work-Life Symbiosis. Jonathan Mayles wrote a book, In the Flow. Joe Jacoby wrote a book, Slalom. Have you come across any of those?
Yeah, I have. And I think there's, and I'm not surprised because, coming back to what I said earlier on, I think there is so much that can be learned from sport and transferred into other areas, from the approach and from the mental side and the resilience side. I think there are philosophical overlaps for sure, particularly around flow and adaptability. Look, I think when we kind of strip it back, I think a lot of what the teaching from sport into any area, and I kind of from the Balancing Act, Mastering Work, Wealth and Wellbeing book, sport is one example, and then I kind of pulled ones from different areas so readers can see actually how people have managed these high performing lives, careers in different realms. But I think one of the key things that I think sport and therefore all of these books really teaches people or reminds us is that we can't control everything. We can prepare, we can train, we can plan, we can look at the route, but particularly when it comes to, to canoe slalom, it's actually on the day we can't control that environment. The water is going to do what it wants to do. And I think that's part of life, isn't it? We need to remember that we can't control everything. We can influence, we can manage, we can do our best, but that's where that mindset is really important. That's where the build of resilience is really important. That's where understanding how we all respond in different ways, that, emotional intelligence, that recognition of how we deal with situations in very different ways. Adam talks, and it's in the book about how you quiet your mind or how you watch the same that you know how you watch programs you've watched before because of that. There's nothing new. You don't want any kind of new stimulus before a race. You know, I think it's how we can be aware enough to find our own way of doing or performing in. And actually, if we're struggling with that, finding other people around us, you know, just as Adam mentioned about money and influencers or social media, and to ask people, it's actually just recognizing the value of drawing from and learning from those people around you who are doing it or who have been through it or who know more than you do, and learning from those.
Most of us see you on the water very much as a competitor, rightly so. Yeah, listening to you now, and I think reading the quotes in the book, it reinforces to me how much of a career and all this demands and all the demands that come with it. Now, do you see yourself also as a startup entrepreneur on a journey?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think, and I think all athletes should, right? Like they are their own, like they are the product as well. Yeah, I guess on the side as well. Yeah, I have like I see it as a startup, in terms of the coaching business as well. Yeah.
So, Adam, I think what surprised me the most in the book was your comment about letting the water lead. You said, I used to plan every stroke. Now I just plan the spaces. It's about intention, not technique. That was new to me. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I was thinking about that just when Sarah was answering the last question as well about not being able to control everything. That I think in slalom, if you want to get good, yeah, you need to become a master of accepting. We do not have control of what happens out there, but we absolutely have control of how we approach it and how we respond in the moment. And those are the differences between winning and losing, medals or not. I guess the example I can give, at the Paris Olympic Games, I was flying on my final run and fell off that wave about three-quarters of the way down. And I remember in the moment, I actually felt like I got lovely pickup, like better than my semi-final run. And I was like, yes, like I'm flying at this up. And next thing I knew, I fell off the wave. Not really something I could control. That wave changes a lot, that it got quite a few of us athletes. But what I could control was my response. And it was a deal I made with myself in the start line there to just not hesitate for a single moment, like whatever happened. I was thinking about like my younger self, and it was like I'm doing it for him. Go and enjoy it, show how amazing the sport is, and never hesitate for a moment because I knew I had to attack this course with confidence. When I made that mistake, I just didn't get bogged down by it. Didn't even think. Just looked up at where that upstream was. In fact, no, I didn't look up. I put my head down and I pulled as hard as I could. And when I next looked up, I saw I was actually already back in the up. And I just had this feeling that I was still in it and was like, refocus. I didn't have much of a plan, technically for the rest of the course, but just the spaces to move into. And I just ticked them off one at a time and kept that run alive. Did my best section of paddling there at the finish. Yeah, it's a journey that I had to go on to learn. I think I was always someone that did try to control the sport, and the way that Craig Morris used to describe it. We kind of really went on this journey together. It was following the Worlds in Rio in 2018 when we knew something had to change. He described it as like it's great, but like you kind of need the stars to align for you to have that run in this way. And we went on a journey of, I guess, letting go of that control, learning to trust my instincts more. And, it's something that comes with experience as you go. But I find as I get older, yeah, I plan less and less. A lot of paddlers will probably have had experienced this, that sometimes you get on at the top for a session with no real plan and you just bob down the course. And like, I always say that I do my best and worst stuff when I don't have a plan. I'm just like floating down. And I guess the philosophy for me is born out of like, well, how do we bring out some of that best stuff without the worst? It's like, what's the kind of responsible middle there? And I guess, yeah, like, I mean, I'm still a student of this sport. I'm trying to dance that line and find where it is. Yeah, you'll see me 2026 season. This is my year.
I can't wait. It starts very, very soon. I learned so much from both of you from this book. So thank you, Sarah, for writing it. Thank you, Adam, for being part of it.
I think really for me, the main point, or certainly the thing that I, hang my hat on is that high performance is achievable, but it shouldn't come at the expense of health, relationships, identity. It shouldn't. There will always be trade-offs. In order to be really high performing, there will always be trade-offs, but they should be intentional. And they ideally will be, time constrained. So the philosophy behind the book, the reason for writing the book, was to bring those things into more conscious awareness, so people can understand the intricacies and the paradigm of money and mission, of work and life, and of mental and physical health, and can more consciously plan across all of those areas so that they can achieve that level of high performance, but in a much more sustainable and holistic and intentional way.
Right.
To all the paddlers listening, just what an amazing sport that we get to do. I'm grateful for everyone that does it as well and makes it the sport that it is. To you guys, just understand that there's more to life as well, and your experience of the sport can also be made richer through exploring those avenues.
That was Adam Burgess and Sarah Brennand. Adam has represented Great Britain at the Olympics in Tokyo and Paris. He talked to us from Ware in the UK. Sarah is an executive coach, athlete and author. She talked to us from home near Stone, UK. I love that this conversation with Sarah and Adam started talking about the slalom course in Stone and finished with Adam talking about his Olympic final in Paris. Adam is clearly fascinated by the process, which was a theme from my conversation with Bill Endicott in this year's first episode. Understandably, many conversations with our elite paddlers are about the races themselves, but this conversation and the book really helped us comprehend the much deeper side of Adam and the personality traits that have made him so successful and a role model for others. Thanks to my guests today, Sarah Brennand and Adam Burgess. I highly recommend you devour a copy of Sarah's book, Balancing Act, Mastering Work, Wealth and Wellbeing. You can find a link to Sarah's and Adam's respective work in the show notes. I have already recorded our next episode with Eva Alina Hocevar and Ziga Lin Hocevar from Slovenia as a preview of the 2026 season. It will be coming soon. I'm John Gregory. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, tell other people, send them a link, like, follow, or write a review. And if you need more, keep reading Ettore Evaldi's brilliantly insightful and eloquent blog. Stay safe.
That's it for now, but please subscribe to the podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube, and leave a review too. Until the next episode, keep it fast and clean.